This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details. FAN.
Give a one-of-a-kind gift this Mother's Day with a spa experience at Woodhouse Spa. You can check out our contest page. That's your chance to win a $100 gift card. Go to KFAN.com. Keyword contests.
The hockey community has found a way to insinuate itself into the Buckets story.
Is that right?
Let me try this one on you. Spit and Chicklets said if Buckets tried his BS in an NHL locker room, players would handle it and nip that bleep ASAP. Different leagues / players.
But you know what?
I don't know what to tell you, man. You can lie to yourself and pretend that there's a different kind of code in the National Hockey League. But Louis will tell you, it's amazing what teams will do for talent. The sport doesn't matter. Now, that doesn't mean, again, you have to like the sacrifices, the indulgences that teams tolerate and deal with. But talent is the elixir. Teams do sell their souls in every sport to varying degrees for talent. There's no question. It's undeniable. Dan, you're basically saying he destroys all these franchises for what? A playoff run? He has 0 championships, 0. At what point is it worth it for a franchise? Wait until next year when he's making $60 million, missing games, and what Warrior fans get frustrated. We've said
very possible.
It's likely that indeed. I mean, that was the whole point of the bit, was the front end is nirvana. The back end can be downright evil and frustrating. If you're running the Golden State Warriors, if you're Steph Curry, and even Draymond to a large degree, here's what you're going with. We thought our window was closed. Thought it was over.
It's our last ride.
And so we'll take our chances. They're not fools. I'm sure they know what might be coming down the road, but they're playing the odds. And they're saying, we got 2 choices here. We can play it out without Buckets, try to find some other player we could have gotten before the trade deadline who's not as good, and try to win with that one last time. Or we could put all our chips in and hope that maybe even to a certain degree, because there is some truth to this, it's not Buckets' team. That's one of the advantages, at least so far.
Right.
It's Steph's team.
Right.
And Draymond's team to a large degree.
Steph's a big enough brand guy.
Yes.
Alpha already.
Yes.
You're not messing with Steph in Golden State. You're just
Correct.
not.
I mean, in all honesty, you reach a point where they may even feel guilty, but they go, well, I mean, you have an all-time shooter in Steph, right? And you have, again, a very unique player in Draymond, you say, and maybe a wide-open Western Conference. Maybe Oklahoma City's still not ready. So you say, well, if you have Steph Curry, it's a little bit how I feel about with Joker. If you have Steph Curry, and Curry's older, if you have a player like that, you're obligated to try to play that out and milk as much as you can out of it as long as he can still shoot the way he can shoot. Really, I think it's as simple as that. So the Warriors, I'm sure their eyes are open. I'm sure they're not foolish, but they're saying, well, if we have to, we'll deal with that later. 612 guy. No cancers in hockey, huh? What about Parisian Suitor?
It's frustrating.
Oh, yeah. Oh, is it? Oh, not tolerated in a hockey room? They take care of it? How many of these stories did we hear at various times about those 2 individuals? And some of them might not even be fair to the 2 players. But the fact is, that was a lot of the discussion. And if you think that didn't enter into, ultimately, Guerin willing to hamstring the organization to the degree he did, you're naive. So don't make this about that stuff like this would never happen in the world of tough guy hockey. Please. There are teams who sell their souls too easily for talent. There's no question about that.
Bad teams like Minnesota historically have had to do that.
Exactly right. So, now, you hate when I look ahead.
Yeah, am I allowed to just not participate?
Yeah, you are, because I understand it, because the series is not done. It's not unprecedented for a team down 3-1 to come back and win. It doesn't happen a lot, but it can. And you could use the old logic. If the Lakers dominate tomorrow night, then you feel like the pressure does come back to Minnesota. And if they just happen to lay an egg, then you're back to a winner-take-all Game 7. I get that. But I do think the Wolves would match up favorably with Golden State. But I don't want to get too far ahead of it because neither team has technically gotten it.
But I will be honest enough to say I've thought about it, because what an interesting matchup that would be for reasons having nothing to do with basketball. With obviously the buckets thing.
Right.
Rudy and Draymond.
A lot of the bucket stuff here, the people he was battling allegedly were Towns and Wiggins, right?
Yeah.
Largely. So they're both gone, I think.
Yep.
So I think a lot of that juice would be lost, don't you believe?
Not to the team of 19,000 that are going to be there.
Yeah. But see, I wonder if even that, I don't think he'd be as big a villain as Luka was. At this, I think enough time has gone by and the team is good enough again.
Yeah.
That it would be, I'm sure people will get into it because it's a fun thing. Okay, that's the enemy, that's the villain.
And they've got Draymond, who's already villain number one.
Yeah, that's true.
I know they'd love to see Anthony Edwards get one back for his guy Cat, though, for sure.
Now, yeah.
Like maybe Ant could help us with that.
That's true.
I could see Ant saying something like that. Carl's gone now. This isn't Cat's team now. It's my team.
How do you lose? How do you get behind by 60 points in a regulation NBA game? In all seriousness.
Well, they're just not very good.
No, that doesn't explain 60.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. 60.
I know.
You know how hard that is to do?
Yeah. Well, in all honesty, did you see
on the road?
The stretch of the Wiggins plays?
Yes, I did.
I mean, it's just...
Yeah, it was...
And I know he's the greatest guy ever. I understand all of that. But
Sedano's got some nice glasses. He's on the set of
there's
Around
George.
the Horn. Those are sharp glasses, aren't they? I want to get a pair like
those
that.
Those are Pelinka-like glasses.
Those are... it's a Pelinka-like outfit. Don't you think, to a certain degree?
Well, he's LA-based.
That's Sedano.
Yeah,
that's Sedano. I mean, you don't mess with Sedano.
No, you don't.
All right, we got a lot of good texts that have come in on this and the weather controversy. We've got Seifert in about a half hour. Oh, I know what we're going to do when we come back. This headline, I'm sure you were absolutely... Where did it go? Let me find it. I'm sure you absolutely loved it. Oh, no, I can't find it. I'll find it during the break. I thought of you immediately because it's right up your alley.
Yeah.
The alley of what we like to say in the business of victimhood.
Yes.
You're a big victimhood guy when it comes to...
I can be.
The referees. Will you not acknowledge that?
I will a little bit. Yeah. I will a little bit.
But not totally?
Not totally. I'll say I was definitely playing that card on Sunday at Target Center. I was absolutely...
You were?
Wearing the victimhood cloak. I was.
Yeah. Well, I'll find it because it's in your wheelhouse and it just absolutely annoys me.
Should we give some money away?
Let's go ahead.
Bonus bucks thanks to BigDeck.com. Keyword for the 4 o'clock hour is grand. Go to KFAN.com and enter the keyword grand.
Here's the headline. Wait. A Minnesota team benefited from a missed call in a big game? Oh, my God. You people.
The Fan.
You people. And you know who you are. Headline, StarTribune.com. Wait. A Minnesota team benefited from a missed call in a big game?
Tweet that.
So tired. So predictable. Here's my favorite part. This is from this is a Randball blog entry, I believe. Where did it go? Resulting offensive call. No, wasn't that. This, of course, is referring to the call on the 2-minute report indicating that Jaden McDaniels should have been called for committing a foul on Luka when Luka went down to the ground. You could argue it's the most critical play of the game in that it forced him, still in the backcourt, to use a timeout, and it also meant that on the ensuing inbounds pass, LeBron had relatively few options. He had to pretty much get it into the front court, forced it, we stole it.
Jaden got it.
A very large play.
There's a Twitter conspiracy, by the way, about Luka and Jaden that I want to circle back to later.
Okay, all right.
That I think you're going to like.
All right.
For the same reasons.
The league said Monday that a foul should have been called on McDaniels for, quote, initiating illegal foot contact that causes Doncic to lose his balance. And, quote, one person's initiating illegal foot contact as another's extremely tired, all-time complaining player tripped over someone's foot. But the report is what it is. There's a foul. It's a foul. People are getting hung up on, well, who stepped on whose foot? That's not how any of these determinations are made and should be made. It's often why when a player goes down, the other player gets called on the foul, because that's usually the correct call. It doesn't matter if the player with the ball steps on the defender's foot, if the defender has moved into his pathway in such a way that impedes the ability of the player to move forward. This isn't a Rubik's Cube. This one isn't difficult, but it's played like, I guess it's got to be played in this town. Like, wow, that's the first time. About time. Never been evened up before. We finally got it evened up when we all know it's a lot more complicated. And we have a lot more calls that have gone our way over the years. We just don't like talking about them. We don't even remember them because that's not where our mind is focused. What's the conspiracy theory? Now you got my appetite whetted.
And I also have a good Chris Finch quote here in a minute from just after practice here, I think, today from Chris Hine, who's obviously with the team in Los Angeles. There was a video that's been making the rounds. I saw it this morning where somebody has put together a compilation of Luka stepping on Jaden's feet.
Oh, my God.
Multiple times in multiple situations. And I got to say, he's very good at somehow getting his foot right on top of Jaden's.
Well, but that's smart because he knows if the player is impeding his path, the call, if there's going to be a call, is going to be, that's smart. If we had a player good at attracting those fouls, you know what your problem is? You're jealous that Anthony Edwards has not perfected the art of attracting foul calls. Jimmy Butler is a master at attracting foul calls. Our guy, I know everybody wants to think, well, no, they just don't call him. He's not. He's not particularly good at attracting them the way others. And by the way, I should back up. He's not that bad at it. He was 9th in the league regular season. Now he hasn't gotten any going to the basket in this series, but he's 9th in the league. So the fact is, he actually does. The perception is, based on fans like you, is that Edwards never gets to the line. He got to the line 6.3 times a game. There are only 8 other players that got to the line more often than he did.
Can I defend myself?
Yes.
In Anthony Edwards' case, and I think you know this, I abhor, and we even scolded Tom Crean about it because he was the guy that took credit for teaching Anthony how to yell like he's been shot on the way to the basket. And you know I hate that. I don't like that.
You don't like that?
I don't like that. I don't know.
I don't think it helps his cause.
It doesn't, but I don't like, and I think it would be consistent because I don't like Anthony doing that. So I think I would be consistent.
You probably would be.
I don't like when, and I get that gamesmanship has always been part of sports, but I don't like when your intent is to just fool the official or put the official in a spot where they have to call something just because, like you say, Jaden's foot was there, even if Lucas stepped a half foot further than he ordinarily would have, just because I know I'm going to get the call. Like there's some drives, and that's where I was, getting heated with Pelinka on Sunday, because Pelinka in the first quarter, every time Luka drives, he's like, "It's a foul! It's a foul!" I'm like, "It's not a foul, Rob. It's not a foul." And because he's trying to get fouled every single time, at some point the officials are going to actually stand up and go, "We can't give you every one."
Well, and I don't think they did. In that game.
That's why Pelinka was pissed.
Yeah, I think he got, I thought he pretty much got the whistle when he deserved the whistle. And by the way, did you hear in the Sunday game, did we have a repeat of the phantom whistle?
I don't think so.
Or was that just the first game?
That was just Friday.
Friday. So we didn't get it again on Sunday?
I don't think so.
I never heard it on Friday, but apparently a couple people who were there said they did.
I did.
You did hear it?
Yeah.
Did we ever find the culprit?
No, I do. And I don't know if it was somebody actually whistling a whistle or if it was just somebody whistling, because some people can do that. But the biggest play where Luka did stop, like I did hear something that could be construed
Luka
as a
wasn't going to get there anyway, as you know.
Well, exactly. Yeah. Luka's not.
Yeah, Luka's like Luka always looks for an excuse.
Yes.
Well, I don't want to run that far, that fast.
Right. By the way, at some point we do need. We'll see how the Wolves finish this thing off. But do you think Nico Harrison just watches those plays on a loop to try to get himself to sleep? Especially like the Naz Reid 3 that, to Richard Jefferson's credit, they came back with and said, Luka blew it here.
Yeah, that's true.
And just left Naz for no reason.
Yes.
I mean, just anybody that knows anything.
That was a very good piece of analysis coming out of a break where, as you say, they said, Luka, you can't, you basically went to the guy who was already covered.
Right.
Made no sense.
And in what world are you going to be guarding Ant in that situation?
Yeah, he is a bad defensive player. And it goes back to, I'd still take him. Because if you can get the right people around him, and I think Dallas did, although you could say, well, Dallas didn't win the title last year. They ultimately,
but they went on a great
exposed,
run. Yes,
by Boston, but Boston might win the whole thing again for two straight years.
That was an all-time Celtics team.
Yeah,
that
and it might be better
everybody.
this year.
The Chris Finch quote.
Yes.
This is Chris Hine from a couple of minutes ago. Finch was asked about officiating in light of the last 2 minutes, saying Luka was fouled in late Game 4. Here's the quote. You're gonna want to listen. There's a couple of good Finchies in here.
Right.
I mean, listen. Any series, any possession, any time down the floor, if you've watched this playoffs, there's a foul that's called or not called. That's just the way it's been. I don't feel the need to have any hand-wringing about missed calls right now. We've not made this series about any calls, any whistles, or any things that have gone against us or for us, even when they started Game 1 and they didn't call a foul on the Lakers for 20 minutes, which is unheard of. We're not worried about it. No. We're just going to play.
Well,
sometimes it's going to go for you. Sometimes it's going to go against you.
That last phrase.
It's the best.
That's Phil Jackson master's class level when it comes to officiating.
Yes.
That's what Phil was the best at. Just throwing in subtle jabs where you go, even if he's saying, I'm not talking about the officials, and then I'm going to talk about them, right? It's like, it's the old Ronald Reagan line with Fritz Mondale in the debate. I am not going to use my opponent's inexperience against him. I refuse to do that. I will never do that. Obviously doing nothing but mocking that lack of experience. So that's pretty well played.
I love that. And you know what I was also thinking about the last few days when I mentioned that I don't want to look ahead at all because I'm paranoid. I did look ahead enough to go, remember when Finchie talked about how hard it was to play against the Oklahoma City Thunder? And he said, they're hard to play against because they foul all the time.
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
And you can't touch Shea.
Right.
And you just have to play yourself through. Like, that's going to be that. God willing, if all that happens and the Wolves somehow meet up with the Thunder in the Western Conference Finals, that quote's coming back around, right?
It might very well, yes, for sure.
And that's going to be part of it, and that's going to be on everybody's mind, too, because Shea is also another player who's outstanding at finding a way to get himself to the line.
Texter, you were almost correct on your earlier conversation regarding the strongest winds known to man on Earth. Tornadoes are indeed the strongest known winds from a weather phenomenon, but not the strongest winds ever recorded. That distinction belongs to Basement Brew. Said gale recorded emanating from his pie hole while bloviating about a Gophers win.
Are you hungry or are you starving?
Sounds a little like it might be Larry Mondello guy, but it's not.
He's influenced a lot of people.
Very, very well played. This is the A.J. Pierzynski effect. Hate it if he's on their team, like it when he's on ours. There's some truth to that, too. There's no question about that. I think what hurts Luka's case is the relentlessness.
It never stops.
With which he goes forward with whatever his grievances are. I'm starting to figure out, I think part of the reason he gets away with some of it is, I think he's smart about Effenheimers. And I think he just does the old, come on. I think the language must not be that bad most of the time, at least.
Yeah.
I think that's, because that's obviously what has hurt Anthony.
Yes,
over the years,
definitely,
especially this year too.
Now, when he got tripped by Jaden, he did turn around.
Effenheimer?
He was looking right at me and called the bleeping foul.
Yeah,
they're not going to tee him up in that situation. They just aren't. Even though Anthony has gotten technicals for that, he got that one rescinded That was the one where he got rescinded on that Friday night against the Nets.
That's
it was
exactly
the same thing.
Yeah, you're right.
Although that was in the first quarter of a game you were going to win by 30, so it was even dumber. The Luka one, obviously the stakes were a little bit higher.
Let's do this. Let's make this the bottom of the hour pause. We expect Seifert soon.
He's right here.
Oh, he's already in. Good. All right, Seifert in studio to talk about the unveiling of the new, healthier, heavier,
filled out,
bloated, a bit chubby, JJ McCarthy. That and much more, maybe even some leftover draft talk. Is Seifert obsessing over the fact that apparently every national media outlet gave us a terrible report card grade, I can't speak, out of the weekend draft in Green Bay, Wisconsin? All that and more with Seifert.
I know I'm ready to start. I appreciate that question because all the work I put in and just the confidence in my skills and abilities, just being able to do my job and simplify things to, the best of my ability every single day and, just take it one day at a time, one play at a time. And, I have a tremendous coaching staff, a tremendous group of guys around me that I can lean on and they can lean on me.
He lives! JJ McCarthy answering one of your questions, Kevin Seifert. Is that correct?
That was a question I asked, yes.
So I'm going to try a theory on you that I advanced earlier in the show. I felt like the bold proclamation about I'm ready to start was 75% overreacting to people who actually were bugged by his previous answer to this question at that golf tournament where somebody said, hey, Vikings are saying that there's no guarantee that you're number one. And he said, I wouldn't expect them to. I have to earn the job. I thought the reaction, some national media circles, including at ESPN, was silly. Like, what kind of statement is he making there? That doesn't show a lot of confidence. I almost felt like this time he proclaimed more than he needed to, in part because he's feeling wounded by the reaction to what he said during that golf tournament.
I thought that his answer at the golf tournament, I thought was pretty standard and savvy.
I agree.
Actually, because I think the question was basically, the premise was he'd been told, and the last thing you want to do is agree with that premise when they haven't told you, and to appear to your coaches as if you're making an assumption. And so I just took what he said there as sort of a deft, turnaround to make sure he was on the accurate and right grounds. They haven't told him he's the starter. We can assume that that's likely to happen, but they certainly haven't told him, and they're going to make him earn it, which is fine. And he had a good answer to that. And today, it did feel there was a little bit of me did I miss the haters out there saying that he isn't ready to start?
I think that's what it is.
Are there haters? Who's hating on him?
Well, I thought Stephen A. was one of the people who was disappointed in his answer at the golf tournament.
Well,
it's just not even worth it.
No, if that's the haters, I don't know.
I could be wrong. It could have been somebody else.
Yeah, and so, but I also think he's a pretty confident guy. He's had a lot of success at a young age, and last year was his first real adversity from a physical sense, and they've cleared the path for him to do this, and I hope that he feels like he knows that he's ready to start.
Did he look beefy? Did he look okay? Because we're worried originally he lost too much weight, then he's got to gain the weight back.
Well,
is his body any different than what you remember before he got hurt?
It's about the same. I wasn't.
You didn't weigh him.
Well, I didn't weigh him, and I wasn't making mental notes of the various, the various pudge, or whatever there was. He was about 219 at the combine. His, between Michigan and getting drafted. He says he's at 215 now.
Oh, okay.
He said he was down to the mid to high 180s.
Wow.
So, and maybe it was more than that. Maybe he's rounding off, but that's still 25 or 30 pounds that he lost, which is not, he's not 6'10", I think he's 6'2", and that's not a small amount of weight to lose. And he said that was because, he wasn't able to work out, and he's one of the people that he didn't say it this way, but I think he's basically one of those guys that's relatively thin unless he's, doing the things you have to do to maintain your weight, which you see a lot of that in football. It's not unusual. You see people who have to count their calories to make sure they're not 450 pounds. And there's some people who have to make sure that they're eating enough calories and doing enough workout that they can maintain the weight that they need to be at.
And he threw some, right, as well?
Yeah, we got to watch 15 minutes of
15?
throwing. Yep.
So what are we doing right now? These are just workouts?
This is phase 1. Yeah, there's no coaches on the field.
Right.
There's just the strength and conditioning guys, and they're doing really basic, we used to call it calisthenics. I'm not sure. This dynamic warm-up, I think, is what it's called now. And they eventually proceeded to some basic routes that quarterbacks were throwing to receivers. And so he actually did get work with Jordan Addison that we saw. So that's kind of a somewhat real thing.
No, you don't want him to get too comfortable with him. He's going to get suspended, isn't he?
Well, if he does, it'll only be for a few games. Right. So there'll be a large part of the season where they'll be together. And so Sam Howell, the new backup quarterback, was there as well. We were literally watching him meet the receivers that he is throwing to, I assume, for the first time. And so that'll go on for a couple weeks, and then they'll get eventually get out on the field in a few weeks to do, I think, their first actual OTA, which people are familiar, just like the actual outside with helmets on and doing even like remote things that are somewhat close to a normal practice, is not going to start until the week after Memorial Day. So Memorial Day is Monday, and then they're out there that Tuesday, I believe.
Did I see a hitch in his throwing motion? I thought there was a hitch, maybe. No? You didn't notice it?
I have to ask the quarterback.
Was he getting the ball? It looked like he was getting the ball. The two video bits that you sent out earlier, looked like they were both long throws. One to the right sidelines, one to the left.
Yeah,
wasn't it? Looked like he was dealing it
There
deep.
was no pass rush to be concerned about.
Right,
so
sure.
Really, it's literally like just what you would what they were doing today is what you would see them doing before practice would be starting during a regular practice, and so not anything to read into it other than the fact that he was out there.
A few people on the Fan have speculated that Asante Samuel has agreed to be with the Vikings next year, but is just waiting to sign at a later date. Do you agree with that?
I have seen that online speculation, and I know Judd Zolgad has reported some on that on his podcast on Score North, but and the idea being that they were waiting until after the compensatory formula deadline, which was, I believe, yesterday, to do it. And so I can't rule it out, but I don't have any intimate knowledge that it's coming any second.
You can't like confirm it today. You can't.
I cannot
go with it.
I cannot. I can tell you that it would make some sense, and that their cornerback position is not in dire straits, but it could certainly use some additional body. So we'll see if that is something that I asked Kwesi Adofo-Mensah on Sunday, because we had been talking about that compensatory formula deadline in terms of the quarterback. Then they traded for Sam Howell, so that made it seem irrelevant. But I asked him, "Are you going to, do that for any other positions?" And he said they would look into it. And so it's something that they'll at least focus on a little bit here this week.
Why do you think ultimately we went the Sam Howell route rather than, let's say, a couple of the other suspects left, including Tannehill, who didn't play last season?
Super cheap. Super good value in terms of all they really did was move from the top of the 5th round to the bottom of the 5th round, I think it was. And he's in the last year of his rookie contract, and so they're only paying him like $1 million or so. And like it was cheap enough that if they get to a certain point and they're like, I don't know, if this is going to work, it's not going to be any real hardship if they move on from him. And I'm not saying that they will, but it's a very low risk, low commitment type situation. And they had done some work on him in 2022, but they were not, when he was coming out in the draft, but they were not in a position to really draft a quarterback. I think O'Connell kind of looked at that class that year and said, there's nobody here that we would build our franchise around. And so they re-signed Kirk Cousins and played 2 more years with him before drafting JJ. And so, I'm not actively looking for other quarterbacks that they might sign, but it just should be pointed out that the commitment that they made is not one that's very difficult to overturn.
You can't help yourself, can you?
Who's the Steelers quarterback right now?
You can't help yourself, can you?
Who is
you had to go there, didn't you? You had to go, hey, look.
How do you know
the Rodgers possibility still can't be ruled out if he's making $1 million a year? How?
Referring to Kirk Cousins.
Well,
he'll be available.
That's true too. Yeah, that's possible.
And so
did you ask JJ any Rodgers questions today? That would have shown me something.
I didn't, because somebody else did. He I think it was Mike Max. I'm not sure. Somebody asked him, and he said he had I think the question was somewhere along the lines of what were you thinking during that whole process? And he said he had great respect for Aaron Rodgers, but that he had, plenty of his own things to be worrying about. So, that was
good vanilla answer.
Well-rehearsed answer. Like, I don't know that, if it reflected his entire thoughts or not, but that's what he said.
Okay, that makes sense. Was there anybody else out there that was interesting today?
Yeah. You mean in terms of access?
Yeah, in terms of
we
what
talked
you saw.
to Brian O'Neill today, the right tackle, who has just met.
Is he excited about his new interior line mates?
Yeah, he just met Will Fry, said he's his new right guard. So he's a very large man, and Brian O'Neill is 6'7" and 3 whatever.
So he's not slight.
So he's not slight,
Yeah.
and we talked to Josh Metellus today, who is back for his third year and is part of this hybrid defense safety position that he's in. And
I tried to sell him
to JJ McCarthy and to John Grenard, the pass rusher. We did not talk to Andrew Van Ginkel, who signed.
That was my next question.
Got a new contract, at least 1 year added to his contract at a very nice rate of $22 million and change after his career year last year.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah. And so I think, he signed a 2-year contract last year. So last year was the first year. This year would have been the second. He would have been eligible for free agency after this year. So
why were we so magnanimous?
Well, I don't know how it's dispersed, but he was second team All-Pro. I think he was in the running for Defensive Player of the Year. They add 1 year to his deal, and the total amount that's added is $22 million and change. Probably some of it a raise this year, and then the rest his salary for next.
Interesting. So in terms of what other receivers do we have out there? Was it just
Addison was there? I saw Jalen Naylor there. So
no JJ.
No, he does not typically show up.
No
for
reason to.
Somebody asked JJ McCarthy about Justin Jefferson and like how do you work on getting that rapport, because they. With Sam Darnold taking all the first team reps in training camp last year, there really wasn't a lot of throwing going on. And he said, the more reps, the better. But, Justin is so good that whenever he gets here, like they'll be fine. And so that will probably happen during minicamp. If history, in previous years, align, and then all starting when training camp begins in July.
Should Vikings fans be at all concerned by all the low letter grades we receive nationally in the draft, the famous draft report card where everybody's got to get a letter grade immediately after the draft? Because apparently we got a lot of D's and C's and C minuses and C pluses. We might have gotten one B, I think. I don't think we got any A's.
Kuiper was B minus. So.
Okay. Kuiper was B. We're going to get to the Shedeur Sanders story a little bit later. Should we be concerned about any of that, or is it all meaningless?
Most of it was based on the fact they only had 5 picks, and just with volume, you were not going to get but so high, and so that the one I didn't read all of them. I read the Dane Brugler one for the Athletic,
right?
And he said basically and he had him 32 out of 32 in terms of ranking. I don't know if he used a grade, but he just ranked the best to the worst, and he said most of this was the fact they just didn't pick many players. He did say that he had Donovan Jackson, their first round pick, later in the more of a second round type guy.
Well, that's the criticism, right? If you want to accept it, that we could have, in this case, it would have been prudent. If that's the player we had identified, we would have been prudent to move down because we still could have gotten that player. Do you buy that?
The theory is that because the next 2 picks after the Vikings were both traded out. So if those teams were, I think it was the Giants and the Texans that came up. And so it would be unlikely that none of those teams called the Vikings to see if they would move down at 24. Right. So if the presumption is that they were getting calls and just decided not to turn them down, not to do it, was it because they had some intelligence that somebody might actually, even though all the public mock drafts showed Donovan Jackson as a second round pick, that somebody might take him before then and they would lose out on him? That's possible. You could look at their roster and say, where was the biggest single positional need? The one where if you wanted to get one starter out of this draft, what position would it be? And you would probably say left guard. And so I think that was probably some of it as well. If a player is like a consensus, ranked 50th, and you take him at 24, then that's a reach. If he's ranked in the 31 or 32 or 33 or 34, then maybe you're getting cute by trying to pick up like an extra 4th round pick to move down and run the risk of losing him. So I don't have great criticism for them for that. If it had been somebody that, I think at least consensus wise was rated much worse than wherever Donovan Jackson's consensus pick was, then you maybe have a better discussion.
Is it fair to say you will be surprised if at some point this season he is not starting at left guard?
I would be, and it could even be week 1. I mean, he's a guy that's played a lot in college. It's not like he's, was like a 1-year wonder or something and came to the NFL. Like, he played a lot at guard. He's a full-time starter at guard 3 years ago, then 2 years ago, and then last year split between tackle and guard. And so he's played a lot of Big Ten football, and those are the types of players that you think have a pretty good shot to be, if not immediate starters, then very soon.
Does Montego Moss have a chance to be a part of the Minnesota Vikings wide receiver future?
Like all the guys, and you're referring to Randy Moss's son, who's, I think he agreed, he got an invite to a tryout in their rookie camp, and anybody who's in that position is a long shot by definition. Adam Thielen is the most famous long shot to make it in that regard, and so we can't say it's impossible, but I would say that without knowing a ton about how, what type of player he is, I would say that those are always long shots.
Texter, this is looks like area code 651. Good afternoon, Mr. Barrero. Our cornerback room is an injury away from being dire. What does Kevin think about other potential cornerbacks the Vikings might target?
Yeah, I mean, there's we talked about Asante Samuel. Yep. He's out there. I think that they, right now, like, I don't know if they feel like they need to like pile up on depth. Like, if you look at what they did last year, I mean, not that this is always available to you, but I think they signed 3 or 4 cornerbacks during training camp last year, and 2 of them ended up being being people that got on the field pretty consistently for them. And I think that right now they probably want to see, in OTAs, like, you want to give people reps against the top offensive players that you have there. And so there's a guy named Dwight McGlothern who's was a rookie free agent, undrafted free agent that they kept on the roster all last year. I think they want to at least see if he's made progress and can be in the mix. They have a guy named Mekhi Blackman who was a 3rd-round pick 2 years ago, tore his ACL on the first day of training camp, and I think he's getting close to being ready, and I think they probably want to give him some reps too to see where he's at. And that's not to say that they won't sign somebody here in the next few weeks, but I also think that this is the one opportunity in sort of a pressure-free environment to give people who otherwise wouldn't be lined up against your top offensive players a chance to get reps, to get better, and to show you that they should be trusted going into training camp.
Can you rule out the possibility that the backup quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings in 2025 ain't going to be the man we just acquired, Mr. Howell from Seattle, but one of Gaardsy's favorites, Max Brosmer?
Max, I think, was considered the top quarterback who wasn't drafted by a lot of people after the draft, and very quickly signed with the Vikings.
Don't give him the ball, JJ. You're not getting it back.
I would say that.
Oh, so you've jumped ahead to the starting position.
Well,
I was saying backup.
Let's hope you're feeling healthy. Oh. Don't give him a chance.
Whoa.
Don't give Brosmer a chance.
Wow. I thought you were going to say, can I rule out that it's not going to be Sam Howell? And I can't rule that out. But I also, like, I haven't seen the contract, but Pelissero reported there was, I think, $230,000 fully guaranteed money in there, and like, that's not what you give someone who's just has a flyer. And so I expect him to be part of the team this year, whether it's practice squad or on the active roster.
He's got a little talent, I think. Got a little arm talent.
Yeah, and
I'm not ready to turn the team over to him quite yet, but he's,
you get in the system,
get the local
and you
angle.
get here with the coaches here, and who knows what can happen.
By the way, he was at KOC. Well, he and Kwesi both were at the Wolves game. Was it the Sunday game?
Sunday.
Yeah.
In fact, I think I saw KOC with his wife literally like right behind the Wolves bench.
They were. I saw that. And then Timberwolves posted a photo of Kwesi and his wife.
It looked like to me they were at the 50-yard line.
Yeah, they were. They
like
had some good seats.
Yeah.
There was a lot. Apparently, it was Justin Jefferson.
JJ was there. Yeah.
Jordan Addison.
Yeah.
Josh Metellus said today he's been to so many games.
The place to be.
Thinking about getting season tickets for next year. And maybe some offensive linemen, according to my sources, were there. And so it wouldn't even been a sellout if the Vikings people didn't go.
Did we have Metellus for the Toys for Tots event?
We did.
Year?
It was awesome.
I continue to try. I mentioned this to Metellus. He feigned interest. I don't know if he was as interested as he tried to be for my sake.
Yeah.
I said, you need to look up, research Monster Back, because once upon a time in college, the role you play, Metellus plays, was this sort of hybrid role, a little bit of linebacker, a little bit of defensive back, a little bit of everything. He was called the Monster Back. I loved the term.
Really?
I said, you need
that term.
Josh Metellus to try to bring it back to the pro game. You should be the first Monster Back.
I actually hadn't heard that. Who would play that?
I want to say, a little bit, but I want to say it was somebody from Michigan State back in I'm old.
Yeah.
Back in the Duffy Doherty days, going back to the late 60s, early 70s, but I can't remember who the player was.
Well, it's kind of like NFL is kind of like Hollywood and movies. Like there's no actual original ideas. It's all recycled, and they're all like people stealing them from each other. Brian Flores has been very honest about the extent to which he has stolen people's ideas and schemes, and people have probably stolen his as well. And that's, if you're not stealing, you're not playing in that regard.
Let's do this. You have time for at least one more segment?
Yeah.
You came in. It was nice for you to do it. Gaardsy, will you be bitter about the top five?
No, I love when Kevin comes in.
All right.
I know you got Russo coming up.
Thanks to Gutter Helmet of Minnesota for providing the top five.
100%.
Had some rain yesterday. No tornadoes. But I don't have to do anything with my gutters because of Gutter Helmet of Minnesota.
Is that right?
It's the best.
Yeah, you love it. And we love the sponsorship for sure. More Seifert. We'll get to we have not discussed, I got into it a little bit Sunday, but I want to go a little deeper on the Shedeur Sanders story.
Sure.
That became kind of the talk of the draft to a certain degree, maybe more than it should have been, but it was unavoidable. So we'll get to that with Seifert. And if you have Vikings questions, Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line is open at 64686. And as Gaardsy mentioned, Russo files a live report from Vegas at 5.